doubts that I had in my head were all mine. And I had to work to overcome that question that I always ask myself, am I good enough? People, when they think about change, you get hung up on thinking that the only change that matters is something big and huge and powerful and mighty, starting your own organization or moving the needle on an initiative. But when you're young, the best thing you can do is, number one, take care of you, because you are the best asset you can invest in at this time. Women, we don't have the luxury of tearing each other down. You know, we just simply don't have the luxury. There are enough barriers out there. There are enough people out there ready to tear us down. So our job as women, as much as we can, because no one is perfect, is to do our best to lift each other up. You know, don't hold them down. Don't put your foot on their neck. You know, if you see another girl alone or isolated, you never know what they're going through. Keep that part of your heart open. So choose wisely, I would say. Choose wisely. I'm broken and my partner will make me whole. So it's sort of like love doesn't fix the problems that you have inside. The relationship doesn't fix all the stuff that are the holes that individuals have. You can't fix necessarily a broken person just because you love them. Well, as many of you know my background, I mean, I grew up in Chicago in a working class community. My parents weren't wealthy, so we didn't have the resources to spend on fees at private schools. We went to the neighborhood public school, and I went to public school my entire life. And I was always that student who wanted to get A's. I wanted to do well. I enjoyed learning. I enjoyed excelling. But what I found out is that when you're one of those kids in a community where not everyone has the same goals, I found myself having to walk a bunch of different lines. There were some kids that didn't like kids who were smart and got good grades. There were some kids who criticized the way I talk. They said that I talked like I was white, which was another way of saying that you think you're better than other people. So I had to contend with, how do I get my education when I'm surrounded by people who may have different expectations of me? And those just weren't the kids in the neighborhood. There were teachers I had to confront, teachers who underestimated me every step of the way. Even when I applied to Princeton, I write about in my book, and I tell this story all the time, even though I was at the top of my class and I was a class officer, I was a leader, when I sat down with my high school counselor, somebody who didn't know me but was assigned to work with students to help them apply to college, and I told them my intention was to apply to Princeton, that counselor told me, I don't think you're Princeton material. The person whose job it was to help young people reach their dreams when it came to college saw me, and whatever she saw in me told her that my dreams were too high. And that cut me in a way that even though I continued on, I applied, obviously you know I got in, but I still remember that story. I remember that feeling of doubt, just another adult sort of placing a barrier on me that I didn't even have for myself. So then to enter into an elite school, when your high school counselor has told you you're not good enough, when all of society sort of looks at kids of color or kids from poor communities or rural communities as not belonging, I, like many others, walked into that school with a stigma in my own head. More young people nowadays call it imposter syndrome. Kids like me feel like they don't belong, so they feel like they're faking it. And I had to get over that. And one of the ways that I got over it was that I looked around at Princeton and I saw kids who were not as talented or as gifted or as hardworking as I was. I learned that this notion of affirmative action sometimes only applies to kids of color or kids from different backgrounds or poor kids. But there are all kinds of affirmative action that take place in elite schools around the country. Athletes who are admitted not because they're great students, but because they can add value. Legacies, people who come from families with long lines within the school, they get admission. So I started to realize that the doubts that I had in my head were all mine. And I had to work to overcome that question that I always ask myself, am I good enough? And I write about that. That's a question that has dogged me for a good part of my life. Am I good enough to have all of this? Am I good enough to be the First Lady of the United States? And I think that many women, and definitely many young girls of all backgrounds, walk around with that question. But how I overcame that is how I overcome anything: hard work. So whenever I doubted myself, I just told myself, let me put my head down and do the work, and I would let my work speak for itself. And I still find that I do that. I still feel that at some level I have something to prove because of the color of my skin, because of the shape of my body, because of who knows how people are judging me. But it takes some time and it takes some maturity to start having some successes under your belt where you realize, yes, in fact, I am good enough. So I had to get out of my own way, first of all, and realize that I belong just as much as anyone else. Princeton for me was really only on my radar screen because my older brother applied because he was an athlete. He was a good student, but he was also a very good basketball player. So he was recruited as one of those scholar athletes that these universities are looking for. And I knew my brother, right? And I knew I was smarter than my brother. So I thought, well, if he can get into Princeton, I know I can get in there. But I don't think I would have even considered Princeton because I didn't have anyone supporting me. That's why our visit to Oxford was so important. I think that colleges and universities, and I think more of them are doing this, they have to do the work to start reaching out to kids very young. Because as you know, if you're really going to compete in those institutions, kids need to start having a vision of that when they're in 8th grade and 7th grade. I always mess up the equivalent, but before you get into high school, because a lot of times in order to even qualify, you have to take a certain set of courses. And if you don't know that you need 4 years of math or a couple of years of a language, if you start out high school not realizing that you need to build up just a set of courses and experiences to even qualify to apply, sometimes kids don't apply because they miss the boat. So I think we have to start working on that pipeline much earlier. We can't wait until somebody's 2 years out of high school ready to go to college. When they think about change, you get hung up on thinking that the only change that matters is something big and huge and powerful and mighty, starting your own organization or moving the needle on an initiative. But when you're young, the best thing you can do is, number one, take care of you, because you are the best asset you can invest in at this time. So that means taking care of your space, your health, your education, protecting your heart is an important investment for the bigger picture. Change happens every single day with the little interactions that you have with the people in your life. And you can also have an impact on the men in your life, because oftentimes there are fathers or grandfathers or brothers who aren't quite sure that investing in a girl's education is worth it, and some mothers think that as well. Well, you're a living example in your communities of the power of an education. And so vocalize that. Vocalize within your communities what this means to you. Articulate your passion to them. Try to change some hearts and minds so that the next little girls coming up in your communities don't run into the same kind of barriers and the resistance that maybe you experience, because you're coming back as a success. I say this now, what I can do for my family, because I have an education, how I can take care of my mother doesn't have to want for anything, because she placed that investment in me at a young age. And some parents who don't have that experience and are afraid of sending their girls out there aren't thinking further down the road. So you can be the example that some of the elders need to see so that they view education differently for their daughters.
Well, on that,
the other. Without education, you don't have the resources, the skills, the knowledge, the know-how to know how to advocate in your community for change. So it's sort of like, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? It's hard to say. It all has to happen at the same time. Because when you succeed and you rise up and you get your education, you can then go back and bring others along with you. But if you're not trained, if you're not exposed, if you don't invest now in that, then you don't even have a vision for change. And change takes a long time. And I think that's also something that is a bit of a disappointment when young people get out there and they start doing the work and they realize how complicated it is to actually make systemic change. But you have to remember, you may be planting the seeds of change that won't be felt until your grandchildren are here. But that doesn't mean that you don't do the work now. You have to build one by one. But it starts with every girl in this school investing in their preparation so that they have the knowledge and the skill set to tackle some of these issues. Who saw potential in me, people who didn't have to make the investment, who held a hand out and showed me the way. And some of them were much older than me. Some of them were people who were my peers or people just ahead of me. So I am a product of the generosity of other people's mentorship. I feel fulfilled in helping you achieve your goals. It's the most fulfilling thing that I do, is to watch another person benefit from something that I help them do. I'm not here to compete with people. I'm here to continue to lift people up. So I think my hope is that the support that I've shown you and others have shown you, you will find it in you to show that to someone else. And one of the reasons I started the mentorship program in the White House would have an impact on another person with one good conversation. I never underestimate the value, I write this in the book, of showing children my regard, which is why I take time out when I see kids, because I think even if I'm with you in a photo line or on a rope line, that maybe there's one thing I can say to you, that you're beautiful, that you're smart, that I see you, that I believe in you. Yeah, I don't know you, but sometimes a kid just needs to hear that. And that doesn't have to come from the First Lady. It's powerful when it does come from the First Lady, but coming from you, coming from all of you to someone who looks up to you, it means the same thing. So my expectation for all of you is that you find a way to mentor. And maybe now is not the time, but at some point in your life, when you get to a place where you have the space, my hope is that you make that time. And that you continue to look for the mentors in your life, because I still look for mentors, even today. Anybody who knows more than me, I'm gonna sit them down and they're gonna become my friend. And I'm gonna ask for help. I did it when I came into the White House. One of the first people I sat down with were other living First Ladies. I made it a point to meet with every single one of them. Number one, to just thank them for their service. Number two, I wanted to make sure they felt the lines of communication were open with me. Third, I wanted to know what it was like for them. What were their challenges and what were their struggles? And I made sure that my staff stayed connected to Laura Bush's staff so that they could pick up the phone and call and learn. So you never stop learning, and I never stop learning. So if I'm still looking for mentorship, you all should be doing that at every phase of your life. Whether it's another mother, when you become a parent, you're gonna need other parents to help you mentor. If you're in a relationship, you're gonna want mentorship to help you get through your relationship. It never stops. One of the challenges that formal education places before young people is that you're taught to figure out what you want to be when you grow up, right? And you're given titles, right? And there's a finite set of them. A lawyer, teacher, a researcher, you learn those titles. And then you do the work to get to those titles. And then you get jobs and you have careers. What I learned was none of that has anything to do necessarily with who I am, not what I want to be. What do I care about? How do I want to wake up and invest my time every day? What brings me joy? What makes me sad? We don't teach that in school. But I learned to try to find that for me and turn that passion into my career. And that was some of the best advice, because that's when I learned that I didn't want to be a lawyer. Because I'd never taken the time to think about why was I going to law school. I was going to law school because I thought I should be a lawyer, not because that's who I was. That's not, it wasn't that work filled me up. So I had to learn how to do that. And that required networking and exposing myself to more people and more jobs and more careers and more opportunities. And as a result of that, I became an assistant to the mayor in the city of Chicago. And then I went on to run a nonprofit organization, and I went on to be an associate dean at a university, and I went on to be the vice president at an academic medical center. And my life just started opening up in ways that I never predicted, because I started asking myself that one simple question: not what did I want to be, but who did I want to be, and how did I want to show up in the world? And if you all can get the jump on starting to ask yourself that question as you go after your careers, if you're starting to think about what kind of work will bring you joy, because if you find that, you're going to do well at it, and everything else is going to fall into place. And it did for me. So that was some of the best advice I got.
And really,
the strong women in my life were my mother and aunts and my grandmothers. People who got up every day and worked and sacrificed, and didn't complain, and showed me love and filled me up with so much knowledge just based on the common sense, real life people that they were. My mother is the most important woman in my life, without a doubt. And she has been my aid, my source of strength. She moved her life into the White House, something that this woman would have never wanted to do on her own. This was not her idea of something great, upending her life and being put out on the international stage. But she did it because, once again, she was sacrificing to support me and to support our daughters in a way that, she has done all my life. I've seen, women who get up and work and do the hard work, the unpleasant, unfulfilling work of just making a living, and then come home and sew the clothes and do the laundry and make sure that the holidays are special for their children. Those are that's the kind of role modeling. Those are the voices in my head every day when I think about the kind of woman that I want to be. I also want to talk about the importance that the men in my life played in making me a strong woman, because I also had a father and a brother who respected me and didn't treat me as a princess. They treated me as an equal from an early age. So is that we don't want to downplay the importance of men holding young girls in high regard, that plays an important role. And I'm not really speaking to you all right now. I'm talking to the men out there who sometimes think, well, strong girls they come from strong women. And the truth is, strong girls come from strong men too. And that played a huge role in me feeling safe and secure, and also having a high bar for the kind of man I would let into my life, because of the example that my father showed, how he treated me, how he treated my mother. I married a Barack Obama who I knew would be the same kind of man to me and to my daughters. So we can't underestimate the important role that a solid male presence has as a role model. But then there are the friendships. My girlfriends have kept me going through this, especially when I started, when kids came into the scene, because many of my girlfriends were working mothers like me. And you guys cannot relate to the stories and the struggles of all that comes when children show up in your life. It will be the greatest joy, but it will be your biggest challenge, especially if you've got to earn a living and you live in a busy household. So my girlfriends, we relied on one another. That notion, it takes a village to raise a child, is absolutely true. And I want you young girls to know that I don't think that children were meant to be raised in isolation. We need help. We need help from our aunties and our mothers and our girlfriends. But we also have to learn how to ask for that help. And sometimes we're socialized as women to believe that you have to do it all on your own. I've done none of this on my own. I've done this with the help and support and love and emotional encouragement of other women. And on that note, I want you all to start practicing that kind of sisterhood if you're not already, which means that we as women, we don't have the luxury of tearing each other down. We just simply don't have the luxury. There are enough barriers out there. There are enough people out there ready to tear us down. So our job as women, as much as we can, because no one is perfect, is to do our best to lift each other up. And to do that, you have to start practicing now in your friendships and the way you treat other people. There's no room for mean girls and cliques and social complications that naturally come at your age. I want you all to be mindful of that as you grow and start practicing that now with one another. Find somebody who's struggling and help them. Don't hold them down. Don't put your foot on their neck. If you see another girl alone or isolated, you never know what they're going through. Keep that part of your heart open to each other because you're going to need it. And I still need it. So that's one thing that we can do better as women, is that we can take better care of each other. And I hope you all are practicing. And if you are already practicing, you continue to do that. Raising my daughters and having them turn out sane because it wasn't a guarantee. We put them in a tough situation. They grew up with the harsh light of the international judgment on them as they were your age. Imagine being your age and having your father criticized in public, or having every word you utter or everything you post watched and analyzed. Imagine having your first boyfriend plastered all over the tabloids, or going on prom with men with guns, or trying to go to your soccer practice and people are taking pictures of you because of who you are. At the very age where they needed to just blend in, they couldn't, because we forced them into a light that made them stand out. So I spent a lot of my energy being vigilant and trying not only to, make sure that I had substantive initiatives that were making an impact, but I also had to be mom to them first and foremost, and make sure that they felt like they had the attention of their mother while their mother was giving attention to the world. And I'm glad we're at the other end of that for them. So that's a source of pride. Believe that education is the key, not just for young women, but for people in general. Knowledge, the opportunity to mature, to try new things, to meet new people, to be open to different cultures. A lot of the problems that we have in the world come from a lack of knowledge. People who are just underexposed to all the different ways there are to be human. And we judge people based on our limited understanding of the world. And I always try to hold out empathy for those who are in that position, because I know that it's based in a place of ignorance. Sounds like a harsh word, but it's the appropriate word, just not knowing. You only know what you know. And sadly, if your worldview is this small and you know no one else that looks or think differently from you because you didn't have the chance to be educated or to travel or to see the world or to have your ideas challenged and to learn how to be analytical, then it's understandable that you would be afraid of something different from you. But the only way we break through that is to educate ourselves and to educate the next generation. To open them up to new ideas. I mean, you have to learn how to be a critical thinker. It doesn't just happen. So someone can't analyze what Brexit means if they don't know how to think critically about the issues. If you're not a strong reader, if you can't take in huge amounts of information and break it down and have it make sense, you won't even know when things are good for you or bad for you. So yes, I absolutely believe, and particularly for women and girls, because women still raise the next generation. That's just sort of the sad part of this. Women are at the heart of all society. We bring life, we raise life, we nurture life, we feed our families, and if we don't know what to do, if those mothers raising children don't know how to keep them alive or not expose them to diseases or to feed them when they're hungry, if they can't raise a living to bring resources in, we all struggle. So it would seem to me that if we want to solve anything, any major issue that you can think about, climate change, terrorism, poverty, inequality, it starts with an education. You know, I don't know how we do any of it if people don't know what they don't know.
You started to
say, why don't you fix education? The truth is that work has to start in the home, first and foremost, where the messages, for example, that kids are getting from their parents are that education is important, and regardless of what kind of school you go to or what kind of neighborhood you're from, you're going to get up and you're going to go to school and you're going to be on time and you're going to learn what you can in the environment that you can until we fix the problem. But you can change policy, but if you don't change what's going on right in people's homes, that policy means nothing. So I think that's where the whole notion of community organizing comes in. The notion that you have to start building your resources on the ground. You have to start educating and training people to be their own change agents. You know, we have to stop thinking that there is one person that's going to deliver us from our challenges. We are the change we've been looking for. I don't know. I still have a little imposter syndrome that goes on. It never goes away. I'm still sort of like, you're actually listening to me. It doesn't go away, that feeling of, well, I don't know if you all should take me that seriously. I'm just Michelle Robinson, that little girl on the South Side who went to public school. What do I know? I share that with you because we all have doubts about our abilities and what we can do with our power and what that power is. But it goes back to my feeling that if I'm giving people hope, then I'm good with that responsibility. So now I just have to make sure that I am accountable and that I hold myself up in a way that earns that hope and that trust. Because my feeling is we don't have any choice but to make sure that we elders are giving our young people a reason to hope. You know, that in a partnership, that there is rarely a time when everything is completely equal, where you do 50% and I do 50%. Life doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way in your friendships. It doesn't work that way at home. You know, sometimes some people pick up more slack than the other. So it's the equity isn't measured on a moment-by-moment basis. It's sort of a long-term view of equity. So what I found in my relationship with my husband, that there were times that I was doing more of the parenting, more of the homemaking, more of the scheduling and the sort of grunt work of family. And he was doing more career stuff, him stuff, running for stuff, holding office stuff. But now that our kids are older, that's starting to shift in different ways. So one of the things I've been telling to women in particular, what I have found is that it is difficult to have it all at the same time. That there's oftentimes a balance that goes into life. And some women feel like sometimes we as women hurt ourselves. We put too much pressure on ourselves to think that we should have it all. I found that there were times when I took a different career because it was better for my family and it wasn't my passion. But at least I was making a conscious decision about that because I wanted to invest more time in my girls, or I needed a better benefits package. Life, there's a lot of practicality that comes into shaping a life and a relationship with somebody. And there's a lot of compromise and a lot of give and take. But in order to be a true partner in any relationship, I've learned that you have to be whole first. It doesn't work, if this makes sense to you, to go into a partnership thinking, I'm broken and my partner will make me whole. So it's sort of like love doesn't fix the problems that you have inside. That you are a better partner if you work on yourself, if you know who you are, if you know how to earn your own living and to take care of yourself so that if something goes wrong, you can be an equal. If you don't know your likes and dislikes, if you haven't tried new things, if you haven't overcome some of your fears, the relationship doesn't fix all the stuff that are the holes that individuals have, which is why I think education is so important. Because being out there and going to college and learning about yourself and trying new things, all of that makes you a better partner in whatever relationship you choose to be in, because you will have explored yourself in ways that will help you add value. But conversely, you have to pick a partner who is whole. You can't fix necessarily a broken person just because you love them. They have to do that work. So some of the equality comes in, we picked each other for a lot of the same reasons. And I picked somebody, as I said earlier, who would be willing to work on himself and work on us and not just think that's your work to do. So choose wisely, I would say. Choose wisely.
Did you like the video? Check out this other recent clip and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our last video. Watch Mindset Marvel's channel for the description of the video channel.